Now look, any power tool that makes a loud noise, spits out copious amounts of sawdust, and has a razor sharp cutting blade that spins at a terrifying 10 to 16,000 revs per minute can be a little scary for the novice or beginner woodworker or handyman. And rightfully so, because if not used correctly, they can be very dangerous and inflict a nasty injury, which is the last thing that we want. G'day folks, Uncle Knackers here, and in today's confidence building beginners tutorial, we'll be looking at one of the handiest tools in the shop, the electric planer. Now before we plough ahead and start using the planer, I think a quick anatomy lesson might be in order. Now basically the planer is a very simple tool. All we have, if we turn it over, is the cutting head down here, there's the blades, and this spins around very rapidly. So make sure you keep your fingers away from that. And for the record, I'm not plugged in. Now, this section here is called the front shoe, which is adjustable, and this is the rear shoe, which is fixed. And this little thing here is called a foot, and that prevents the blades from coming in contact with the surface after you've finished your cut, as you can see here. And that just protects your blades and also the surface from any unnecessary damage. Now the knob that you see on top of your planer is used to adjust the depth of your cut. If you turn it clockwise, like that, your cut will be deeper. If you turn it anti-clockwise, that will reduce the depth of your cut. Now most planers have this little black knob on the front here, and that's used to secure in place an edge fence, which is this thing here. So the edge fence just goes into that hole or slot on the side, and then you just simply tighten up the little black knob to secure in place. Now the edge fence, that's used for doing step cuts like rabbets, rebates, shiplapping and stuff like that. Now you'll also see that on a lot of edge fences, they'll come with extra holes. Now the reason for them is so you can secure a longer piece of wood to that for a more controlled cut. Now if we just quickly turn the machine over, you'll notice that on that front shoe, there's a V-shaped cut into the base. Now that's for doing a chamfering type cut, and I'll show you how to do that a bit later on in the video. And finally on the handle we have the switch that turns the machine on or off. Now you'll also notice this little black button here, which is a safety switch, and that pushes in and out. Now if that button isn't pushed in, the trigger won't operate. Push the button in and suddenly you're good to go. Now as with using any power tools, safety is very important. So do yourself a favour and wear some hearing and some eye protection. Good stuff. Now before you start planing, if you have any loose clothing, like my floppy old shirt, make sure it's all tucked in. Even if it shows off your big fat gut, don't be too self-conscious. It's just that power tools and loose clothing are not a good idea. Next up, get yourself nice and balanced. Stand in front of the piece that you're working on with your feet apart, not all the way back here. That's bad. Stand in front so that you feel comfortable and relaxed throughout the entire pass. Now the first thing we need to do is to secure the piece that we're about to plane, either by placing it into a vise like I have here, or by clamping it down by some other method. And I've got a couple of really cool tips on how to do that, which I'll demonstrate a bit later on in the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Now the reason for clamping this piece down is that you don't want that to move during the planing process. Now with all those preliminaries sorted, it's time to start planing. And all you need to do is to place that front shoe flat on the piece that you're wanting to plane, making sure that the cutting head with all those blades doesn't come in contact with the work. And also letting you know that I'm not plugged in, as this is just going to be an initial unpowered demonstration run. So with the front shoe sitting nice and flat and having those blades clear of the work, start the planer up, wait till it reaches full speed, and then ease the plane into contact with the work and push it steadily forward. Now one good thing to remember is that as the planer enters the workpiece, it's a great idea to have more pressure on the front handle than the back handle. And the reason for that is that as the planer hits the workpiece, if you have more pressure on that back handle, there's nothing under here to support it. So what happens is the planer comes up and it tends to tilt, and it does this. and that creates a big gouge there, which is never very nice. Now with that base plate almost fully supported, it's okay to go ahead and apply even pressure to both handles. Now just ease your way along the piece until you get close to the end, and then you apply more pressure to the back handle than the front handle. And the reason for that is that if you're applying too much pressure to the front handle, as the planer goes over the end, it tilts down, causing a gouge, also known as a snipe. So what you really need to do is, as you're approaching the end, it's almost like a plane taking off. Get close and then just slightly lift. Too easy. Beautiful. Now just very quickly, as you probably already know, a planer is generally used by a carpenter. And since we're talking about carpenters, world's worst segue, what did the duck say to the carpenter? Quack, quack. Because, well, it's a duck. That's what ducks do. Don't speak English as far as I know, so yeah. Okay. Gotta work on those jokes. They're getting worse. Now one of the big secrets when it comes to a successful planing job is to do it in small increments. Say for instance we want to cut from the top of this piece of wood down to that black line. Do that in 5 or 6 passes rather than one big hit, and you'll finish up with a more controlled and precise finish. Now earlier on in the video we talked about this front shoe and how it had that V shape cut into it. That's for doing a chamfering type cut. Now if you give me a couple of seconds, I'll show you how to use it. Now the purpose for the chamfer, also known as an arris cut, is to put an angle on the piece of wood that you're working on, like a fence post or a veranda post. And all you need to do is to place that V on the base plate onto the edge of the piece of wood. That locks the planer in place, and then just simply tilt the planer to your desired angle, and then away you go. And as you can see here, we've achieved a couple of different profiles just by altering the tilt or the angle of the planer. Now like I said earlier, it's really important when you're planing down a piece of wood to have it nice and secure by placing it in a vise, like I have here. But what if you don't have a vise? Well, I've got 3 really cool tips that you might want to try. Make yourself a jig like I have here out of an old piece of wood, which you just simply clamp down to the workbench. Now if you want to make one of these, I'll leave a link to a PDF which you can download down below. Once your jig is clamped down and secure, all you need to do is to get your piece of wood, place it inside that V, it's locked in, and you're good to go. The next 2 tips involve the use of a pipe clamp, and all this is a couple of fittings placed on the end of a length of pipe. They are unbelievably simple and fantastic to use, and you're only limited by the length of pipe that you have. Now the first cool thing we're going to do with our pipe clamp is to make our own homemade vise. So all I've done is I've attached a length of wood or timber to the top of the workbench, and then down below I've attached it to the leg of the workbench. And then I've gone ahead and made a duplicate copy of that piece there. Now you don't need to use any fancy material, scrap wood's fine. Then I drilled a hole the same size as the pipe through both pieces at exactly the same height. Now when you drill your hole, just make sure that you give enough room beneath the bench for the clamp to fit. And then all you need to do is just simply place the pipe through those 2 holes, and then around the back we need to attach our clamp. Now this is a bit tricky because I can't see what I'm doing without getting in the way of the camera, but we'll give it a go. There we go. Now we'll just slide that pipe through like that. Then we just slide on our front clamp just like that, and we're good to go. And then all you need to do is to place your length of timber in the vise. You'll also need a second piece, the same thickness as that, just to even out the pressure. So I'll put him down there, and then we can tighten the vise as tight as you like. It doesn't matter. Look at this. This is amazing. Tighten that up. And there we have this. Is as solid as a rock. Love it. Now the second pipe clamp method is just as cool, and all you need to do is to drill a hole into your workbench, slide the pipe in, and then beneath will attach the other fitting. And then all you need to do is to place the piece you're working on under that clamp, tighten it up, and check this out. That is unbelievably strong. How good is that? Now, just in case you're possibly interested in buying a set of pipe clamp fittings, I'll leave a link to some down below so you can check them out there. Now, word of warning, don't buy cheap ones. They are rubbish. Now, just a couple of quick tips regarding planer blades, and that is, tip number 1, planer blades and nails aren't good friends. Now, if you're like me, I work with a lot of reclaimed wood or timber, which means lots of nails. Now, what I use is one of these rare earth magnets. They're incredibly strong magnets, and I use these to detect nails for me. So if you push it along the wood or the timber, bang, it's found a nail. Now that one was visible, so it's quite easy, but this one here has been broken off and punched down. So watch this. Come along, bang, it's found that nail. That way I can dig that out and then plane to my heart's content without worry of damaging the blades. Now when your blade does get a bit dull, and they do over time, you'll find that most blades are double-sided, which means that once this side wears out, you can simply turn the blade around and use that side. Now I reckon that deserves a great tip, knackers! Now if you want to see more videos like the one you just watched, make sure you check out my favourite power tool tutorial playlist, which should be popping up over there anytime soon. Hope to see you there shortly. I'm off for a cup of tea. Cheers.